Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Khadija Hafiz. I'm a consultant diabetologist and I'm delighted to be joined by a special friend and colleague, Dr. Hamid Farooqi. And we'd like to talk about how diabetes technology can, I think he's there. Is that him? All right, good. I'm Scott Freeze. No.
And Professor
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Dr. Ahmed El Laboudi. I'm a consultant endocrinologist at Imperial College London Diabetes Center. And I'm here with Dr. Muhammad Farooqi. Dr. Farooqi does not need an introduction. He's well known in the field of diabetes. Dr. Farooqi is the director of the Dubai Diabetes Center, and he is a professor in MBRU. And we are talking today about digital diabetes care. And I cannot think of anyone more suited to share his experience and let us know about where we are with regards to the digital diabetes care. Dr. Farooqi, it's such a pleasure to talk with you about this important topic today. So, starting with digital diabetes care, what do we mean when we talk about digital diabetes care?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. So with digital diabetes care, I think it is a word that encompasses a huge amount of offerings that are there that help us manage people with diabetes. These can range from simple apps that help us keep an eye on things that we do, all the way to complex disease management systems that integrate with electronic health records. And the goal, the ultimate goal, is obviously better diabetes control.
Fantastic. That sounds very interesting. And with regards to devices that comes within the digital diabetes care ecosystem, things like continuous glucose monitoring, insulin pump, or the devices where there is connection between the continuous glucose monitoring and insulin pumps, like what we describe as automated insulin delivery systems. I mean, we have seen increased uptake within UAE healthcare system. Can you let us know more about these devices, your experience with them? How do you feel they've impacted the life of our patients with diabetes, whether type 1 or type 2?
Sure. So in terms of the devices that are there, we can pretty much broadly categorize them into three categories. One are those devices that help us monitor the blood glucose levels. Second set are devices that help us deliver care. And the third one are devices that are not directly connected with diabetes care per se, but do help us, and I'll give you examples of all three. So with regards to the monitoring bit, I mean, I have been in the field long enough to tell you that we started with urine dipsticks, right, to monitor blood glucose levels. Then came along all these glucometers. They became smart glucometers. They became integrated glucometers in a sense that the data from the glucometers can now be transmitted to any of those servers. So that line then was kind of added on by the continuous glucose monitoring systems. As you remember, we had initially intermittent glucose monitors. We had glucose monitors that would give us data 3 days later. And now we have real-time continuous glucose monitoring systems. And again, every new day brings us newer developments in that field. So just sticking to the devices, the first set. The second are the ones that are helping us deliver care. These could be something like the smart insulin pumps, which have a memory built in, which tell us how much insulin has been delivered, so that you can keep a close eye on how you're managing your diabetes, all the way to insulin pumps, which could be the ones that are now available, disposable ones that last a few days, and you can get rid of them, all the way to the Rolls Royce of those pumps, which are really expensive but have features that can help us give a lot of the diabetes management to the technology that is built into that device. The third group, which I was alluding to, was something that we had used as a part of a trial, and I will come to that. These are, for example, smart pill boxes. Now, the key to diabetes management in the long run is ensuring compliance. You will agree with me.
Totally.
So, if you have 2 or 3 different medications that you're supposed to take every day, there is a pretty good likelihood that people will forget. Now, these smart pill boxes are basically attached to an app that sends a signal to that pill box, and that has an sort of a visual, a band of light that starts to flash, or a beep that starts to come at the time when the patient is supposed to take that medicine. As soon as they open that particular compartment where the medicine is there, we get a signal through the app that yes, the person at least attempted to take the medicine. Whether they popped the pills or not, we don't know, but at least we know that this patient had taken the medicine. Now, that's not a diagnostic one in category 1, nor a delivery one in category 2. That's why I made it a category 3 that would help us. And in addition to that, as we have talked about multiple times, it is not just the management of diabetes alone. So we have management of blood pressure as an example. So connected blood pressure devices are also a part of that universe in which we can provide better comprehensive diabetes care.
Fantastic. So that sounds like a very interesting ecosystem where it can really help patients to improve their metabolic parameters, not only diabetes, but also other metabolic parameters. But you've alluded to a very important point, which is the cost. You've mentioned that some of these devices are expensive, which represent a challenge, I'm sure. How do you find the uptake of these devices, especially expensive one, within the UAE compared to developed countries?
So I think it all comes down to cost-benefit analysis. If you then look at the management of diabetes, although we are focused on bringing the blood glucose levels down, the ultimate goal of why we manage patients with diabetes is to avoid complications. There is no doubt about that. Now imagine if we could avoid just one stroke or one heart attack, that more than pays for any of these devices. Now, we can have a long discussion with regards to the financials of the healthcare as a whole. what I would say is that payers, in particular our commercial payers, do have a thought process that if this person is not going to be on my plan for an extended period of time, it doesn't justify the cost of a device which is many multiples of that patient's premium if the person, for example, is just there for a year.
Yeah.
However, we are lucky that a lot of healthcare in our region is government funded, and these are individuals that are going to spend their entire life under that particular health payers system. So therefore, it has been much more easier, if I can use that word, to convince them
Yeah.
that these technologies are upfront. There is a sticker shock. But in the long run, they are going to be much, much more cost effective because we are responsible for their healthcare cradle to grave.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, I think, such an important point because the issue of equity within the healthcare system is one of the important issues. And it's possibly one of our duties as patient's advocate is also to highlight to the payer that you're looking at long-term complication. But what about short-term one? If you prevent one admission with severe hypoglycemia, you will get your money back, right? So it's possibly the local research, looking at our own data, can certainly help us in that direction.
Correct.
Another important point, which is now we are in I would imagine that huge amount of data is generated from these devices. So that can certainly lead to an overload for physicians when they come to deal with these technologies. Do you think the healthcare system moving forward is equipped to deal with that, especially as these devices will increase more and more, will be expanded into new indication within our type 2 diabetes and type 1 diabetes cohort?
Yeah. So, as you very well pointed out, now these data points are going to lead to a flood of data coming in. Now, there are two aspects to it. The second one we may discuss in the next part, which is the fatigue on the patient's part. But with regards to the physicians, we have to be very intelligent about it. I will refer you to a study that we did a couple of years ago, in which we identified, and this was a passion of mine to see what happens if we take a cohort of patients that were lost to follow-up and we don't bring them in physically, because a lot of times the reasons are the distances or I don't have a transport, whatever it may be, and we put them on remote patient monitoring. So we took a cohort, I wanted more, but we ended up with 38 because that was the time of COVID. We used the same glucometers that they had, but luckily they were Bluetooth enabled glucometers. We then had an app on their phone. The glucometer would connect to that app because they were not supposed to do anything extra. They would just check their sugar as they would normally. The glucometer automatically transmitted the reading to the app, and then the app sent it to a command center that we had set up. Now, obviously, they were checking multiple times in a day and a lot of data was flowing in. But what we did was that we used the traffic light model of, with each individual patient, what is the normal range. So this is a green, for example. 10% below, 10% above, hyper or hypo, is yellow, and beyond that is red. Greens, we don't have to bother about. Yellows, we created automated messages that were appropriate for that particular condition, that were sent back to the app for that patient, that your sugars are kind of heading in the upward direction, what exactly happened, and you need to intervene. Or if it is going towards the lower, maybe you need a glass of orange juice or what have you. In the red category, we had standard sets of questions that our staff from the command center asked, and that was the intervention that we did, right? You won't believe it. It's published, though it's in the International Journal of Clinical Practice, in the peer-reviewed journal. our A1C average, and these were obviously the patients who were lost to follow-up and they were not well controlled, was 10.3 at the end of 3 months. And we gave them the pill boxes I told you about as well.
Oh, right, okay.
The A1C, believe it or not, was 7.4%.
Fantastic.
3 months. Okay? So a lot can be achieved remotely,
Yeah.
but with persistence. And to the question, because of all these data points, imagine bulk of the data was green.
Yeah.
Yellows were already taken off. So we had some artificial intelligence built in.
Yeah.
It was the fraction which was red that we had to intervene. And that is the basic underlying principle of how to deal with these flood of data that is coming in, that you have to put in these processes in place, and then you have the AI built algorithms at the background that takes away a lot of work, and you intervene only when your intervention is necessary.
Such an excellent study and such an excellent system to have in place. So this is, and it tells us again actually the potential advantages of having a digital diabetes ecosystem. So you've mentioned remote monitoring, so bringing an excellent level of care to the patients at their own environment. It highlights the value, the benefit at a population health level. You've identified those who are not controlled compared to those who are well controlled. It gives you an intervention through the text messages and how it impacts patients' behavior. Again, you've employed an algorithm and AI to help with that. So we need to generalize this. Did you take it further?
Yes. As you know, it all takes a whole lot of approvals, financing, and I am delighted to tell you, Alhamdulillah, we started recruiting normal patients onto this program. Dubai Health has launched this program from mid of December, and as I sit here today, 45 people are already on the program.
Fantastic, impressive data.
Alhamdulillah.
And Alhamdulillah. And again, when it comes to data, always AI comes into play. So I always, when I talk about data, I say that there are several assets, right? People talk about gold, about cash, about cryptos, about stock market, real estate. But data is actually recognized as an asset. And it is the only asset that appreciates with use. So when it comes to AI, what are your views with regards to the use of AI when it comes to the huge amount of data generated? You've given us an example in this impressive study that you've just described. But what is the next step?
So, you see, whether we like it or not, AI has come to stay. And as you very well know, it is going through its stages, with the 10th stage being singularity, which I don't know when, but the earlier stages are happening very fast, right? So I don't think that it would be wise not to use it to our advantage, right? AI is something that is a supplement. It is not a replacement of the physicians, right? So the first thing is that we need to have a realistic idea of what AI can do for us. I think, in my humble opinion, AI has a couple of advantages. First one is the ability to sort through a lot of data at a much, much, much faster speed than you and I can. We give AI the parameters of what we are looking for, and it sorts through that whole jumble of data and gives you the answers that you need, number one. And number two is that it does sometimes come up with associations that are beyond our understanding, in a sense that, for example, we were doing this little study about why people don't show up for their appointments. And we fed in all the data to see exactly, what it is. We knew, for example, and I'm sure you see it also, the young ones with type 1 diabetes, they don't show up generally as compared to, more older type 2 diabetics and so on and so forth. But what we may end up with are certain associations that we did not think about. For example, on Mondays, between 3 and 5, we have the most common dip in the patients. And that could be, I'm just making it up to give you an example.
Yes.
Because we did not know that, on Monday, in that particular neighborhood, there was a certain activity that was happening that would not allow people to come through, and therefore they were missing the appointments,
okay.
right? That was not for us to understand, but AI, as an example, can pick up associations that are not really, easily understood. And coming back to the data part, I think, yes, data is the new oil, no
Yes.
question asked about it.
Absolutely.
Right? But there are certain things that we have to be very careful about. First of all, it is patient's data. We have to have a proper consent in place. Number two, we need to have adequate data protection and data security in place, right? If you are using it for large-scale analysis, you need to make sure that it is anonymized data. You need to make sure that the local regulations are followed. For example, in Dubai, we have the DESREC, which is the Dubai Electronic Security Committee, and there are rules as to how that data needs to be protected. There are rules at our federal level. Data cannot go outside, medical data, the boundaries. So the servers have to be here. So there are finer points in data, and ultimately, obviously, data protection. So those are the things that, when we assume that kind of employment of technology, we are employing that, then we also need to assume the responsibility that goes with it.
Certainly, certainly. I know that in 2019, there is federal law too for the year 2019 about medical data security. And as you've highlighted, that the server need to be within the UAE. And we are fortunate that within the UAE we have such a strong healthcare digital infrastructure. Like in Abu Dhabi, where I work, we have Abu Dhabi Data Center, which is responsible for Malafi. It's the first regional health information exchange.
Yes.
So that has 100% connectivity, which is impressive.
Yes.
I mean, I used to work in the UK, and that was such a project was in place, but it was really difficult to implement, while Abu Dhabi managed to implement it through Malafi. So 100% connectivity, 2.8 million files. So impressive. And I think the next step would be within the digital diabetes ecosystem, it's really important to consider incorporating that within this National Health Information Exchange. So we are fortunate having such a strong digital diabetes ecosystem. Now, my question is, with regards to our patients, how can we increase awareness, aiming to increase uptake of such an important ecosystem? Of course, this event is an example. Any other ideas that we can increase the uptake?
So the thing about it is that, we are in an age of social media, and the impact is far beyond any one of us expected. May it be at a regional level or global level, and how, countries are undergoing changes in government. On all of that, they are all now channeled through the social media. So that is the most likely avenue where we can spread this message and try to make people understand how this will benefit them in the long run. There are key areas in terms of that the patients, for example, where you had referred to is equity. There are still going to be patients who may not be the right candidates, but that doesn't mean that they will not get the proper diabetes care. However, we need, for technology to be effective, we need proper buy-in from the patients. And the way that the user interfaces are these days, even, children that are not even talking, they are flipping through their parents' devices. So why not that the patients with diabetes are not going to use it properly? I have very limited doubts about that, but the key thing here is to make it real patient friendly and make it available to them on an equitable basis.
Perfect. Dr. Farooqi, the team is giving me signs that we'll run out of time. I mean, I can sit with you for another hour to talk about such an important topic. Honestly, it was a pleasure talking to you about that.
Pleasure was entirely mine.
You've told us today about the importance of building not only a digital diabetes ecosystem, but it's a digital metabolic ecosystem.
Yes.
And how can that be useful to our patients? I mean, I quite like the study that you've led a few years ago. It highlighted the value of such a system, the value of bringing care to the patients through the remote monitoring, population health monitoring, intervention through messaging, the value of AI as in dealing with such an important asset, data. We've also talked about the importance of governance for such an important asset. And we talked about how can we be patient advocate with regards to ensuring that there is equitable healthcare system that provides such an important tool to all our patients. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much. It was a delight talking to you.
Likewise. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much to the team.